You go in, you select your firewall. Whatever it might be, the ability to go in there. But if you get an alert where your analyst is going in, has looked through it, has decided they want to go out to the firewall and block access to a blacklisted site, for instance, you can do it through the platform. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily go out and do that through a different, manually. And also, by the way, doing it through the platform, you'll have a record of that activity. Same thing with your Active Directory. If you want to go in here and you want to set up your AD, for instance, let's say you're using Azure, you can put that in here. Now, if you get an alert and you decide you want to take action, you can do it through the platform. And lastly, same thing with EDR. So I just wanted to highlight that for people that even though you want to take the actions yourself, you don't want to autonomously or automatically have the platform take action. You can still do it through the platform. All right. And again, it will show a record of it. All right. So let's go back up to the command center. And this is new functionality. This is a relatively new screen. Just basically showing you all your ingestions, how many events you've captured over the last 24 hours, how many threat indicators, how many alerts were raised. And then this is the new, very new piece of functionality, the autonomous SOC that Josh was talking about, Chandra was talking about, Abhishek will talk about next. This is incredibly powerful, but I want to make sure something's clear because from my perspective, you heard Chandra and Josh say there's always going to be a human involved, right? So then one might ask, why have an autonomous SOC then? Well, think about, again, the amount of savings this can provide in terms of time, in terms of analyzing that alert. If we come in here and we look at an alert, let's look at, this is one of the cases in the autonomous SOC, okay, that needs to be looked at. So all of this work was done for you. You got an alert, okay? All of this work was done by the platform, almost instantaneously to give you, what was the decision, okay? This is a really, just give me, it's lagging a little bit here, but this is a really powerful depiction of how the platform works. It has these 4 agents that are running here. This investigation lead, this endpoint hyper agent. There's also a NetFlow hyper agent. There's a chief analyst. So all of this is happening for you, and it's going to go down and show you how it made the decision it made and all the data. It'll sorry for the delay here. Give me 1 second to just refresh this. I'll be right back. I apologize. Share again. Sorry for the delay there. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my screen again. Okay, so again, I just wanted to highlight you're going to get a very detailed look into the autonomous SOC, but basically, it's very incredibly powerful in terms of just helping an analyst who wants to go in and take a look at what's supposed to be happening. Here's recommendations on what steps they should take. You can have the platform take those actions automatically, and you can use the remediators I just showed you. But just having this information for the analyst so that they don't have to go in and figure out, okay, sort through thousands of threat indicators and potentially what actions need to be taken. Its recommendations are here for you. Okay, so let's jump to alerts here. I want to highlight some stuff in alerts. So the autonomous SOC, what it's dealing with is the information it gets here, right? So this was something Josh talked about as well. To me, the primary value of the platform is the ability to collect all this information, watch it for you without you having to worry about it. And I always like to show what we call these minor alerts here, right? So these are, let's go change that. These are things that the platform has seen it hasn't raised an alert on, okay? It hasn't told you have to do anything yet. Let me just open the window, the time window here a little bit. So this is an alert, a minor alert here, right? So on 6:30, it started collecting activity, right? It started seeing things. It saw a bunch of suspicious processes. Okay. It's raised a minor alert, but you can see here it continues to collect this data over time. And some days there's no data, some days there's lots of data. All of this is saving your analyst from having to remember that on 6:30 that it saw these suspicious processes and that on whatever 7:17 here it saw a new process. This is all being done for you in the background automatically, right? That's the power of that, along with then the autonomous SOC, which will when an alert is raised. So if we go back here and we look at actual alerts, and I'll just pick a certain type, the platform can show you all the different types of alerts that you've collected. But here I'll just pick this is one that was raised. And this is actually another thing I want to highlight. This is new, relatively new functionality here in the alerting. This was the way things used to look. You come in here and you'd see all of your threat indicators and your your graphical representation. But now they've made this even more efficient, right? So now you have this heat map where you can see all the different threat indicators here, how many of each, and when they happened, so across time. Here you can see that this was a minor alert. Uh, you see severity score and severity minor up above here, right here. And then right here, it was raised. So this is when it was raised to you to take action. And this is where it would then kick into the autonomous SOC. You can go in and get all the analysis done. So this is the underpinning of it. Just some other quick things to highlight here. In any alert, you can also get an analysis of it and recommended actions. This is prior to autonomous SOC, which is going to go even deeper. You can get a timeline, right? So you can see everything that's happened, right? From the day it was raised as a minor, what actions were taken, when it became a major. So you can get a complete timeline. And if you did take action, if this was remediated, you could also see, that in a timeline of a closed alert. So just stuff I wanted to highlight that's been in the platform for a while, but some new looks at things. One other thing I'll highlight here. So we have Deep Tracker, right? This is our threat hunting. We've added this Sarah AI capability. So now you can say, let's just say I want to change the time window here. I want to just say show all net flows, right? So you don't have to understand the scripting language. You can just sorry. Again, I'm just getting some slowness here. Well, we'll come back to that. But basically, oh, so I just run this, take a couple seconds. Then down below here, it will pop up all of the net flow activity. Right. And other thing I wanted to highlight here is that every one of these, you can go in, let's say traffic Trojan horse here, right? I can do this summarize with Sarah AI. This is again some powerful new functionality where it will take this particular threat indicator, this particular activity, and give me a nice verbal description of it and what it means and what actions might need to be taken. So this takes a couple seconds to run. But you can do this across the platform. This Sarah AI is very powerful. That they added the abilities just about anywhere in an alert, in threat hunting, making playbooks and so forth. You can use this capability to actually help you do it much more efficiently. So here you're just kind of seeing an overview of what this particular threat indicator means. Okay, so you're seeing this connection was established. This isn't necessarily anything malicious, but it's just highlighting in detail what that particular threat indicator means, what that particular activity means. Okay, some other things I wanted to highlight here. you did it. We showed a PMAX. You had a pretty deep dive into PMAX the other day, yesterday, but I wanted to highlight something that I also think is valuable to know. Uh, if I go in, he showed you how you could basically provision for Trism, which is the new functionality. You can turn on EDR, EPP, but one thing that we've also added, there are cases where you might have an EDR already and it's collecting telemetry and it's giving you information about alerts. I actually have a customer with this case. They also needed to collect logs and store them for compliance purposes, right? Which that other tool didn't do. It gave them all the information about what was happening, but it didn't provide the ability to store the logs for compliance. So this ELC here is something you can turn on. You can say, okay, I need to collect those logs, store them for whatever it is, a year, 2 years for compliance purposes. So, very powerful EDR functionality where you can select just a high level functionality. You can go EPP, which is very deep, and basically you can do the PII and PHI. This is the log collection. And then also, as you saw yesterday, the ability to turn on the agentic AI monitoring. That's the Trism here. Okay, let's close that. All right, so again, this is a lot of the new stuff that you're getting overviews of in the last couple of days. We've seen the DAST, we've seen the ID guard. You're going to get the autonomous SOC next. OT is coming up. BAS is coming up. So, I'll just do a quick highlight on some of these. The BAS, the breach attack simulation, is something that's very powerful in that it can help you basically check your environment against any particular type of attack, right? So here is a dashboard, and kind of showing you all the different types of attacks. But one of the things I always like to highlight is, instead of just running a particular threat, Lazarus or Quillen or Hero, you can basically say, okay, I want to run a healthcare uh, test or a simulation, right? So these are the top, what is it, 6 or 7, maybe 8 uh, APTs, ransomware attacks that are going against healthcare. I want to run a scan of all of those, right? So basically, without having to do 8 different scans, I can get one that shows how my healthcare environment is going to hold up against these type of attacks. And again, they're going to show you this in a lot more detail. But basically what happens is when you run it, it's going to show you, okay, what happened. It's going to say there were 201 total MITRE ATT&CK techniques used. 96 got executed. That's bad, right? That means they weren't caught in your environment. 105 were blocked. So there's a lot more detail to this, but just basically showing you the high level of it. OT security is, you're going to get a nice overview. Basically, this is a really important new piece of functionality where, along with IT monitoring, anybody who has any OT infrastructure as well, which is hospitals, manufacturing, utilities. So there's all kinds of places where OT and IT are both needed. So this functionality being, again, embedded in the same platform, you don't have to have 2 different UIs, 2 different platforms. It's all together in the same platform. Very powerful. Okay, so last things I want to show you, some simple things that have been around for a while. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the platform, defaults, I believe, to English, but you can also show, Spanish, French, uh, Japanese, and others. So basically the ability to, translate this for your SOC analyst, for your maybe the customer who's looking in, so they can you know, get the native language for themselves. Uh, Again, I've mentioned this the Sarah IA capability. This is another new. So SOAR is a really powerful piece of the platform. The ability to actually come in here and say, okay, instead of having to build a playbook manually, which I usually show demos for, I can come in here and say, you know, build me, create a playbook for, let's say, compromised. credentials alert. And it's going to come back now. It's going to ask me some questions. It's going to say, okay, let's see, how often should this run? Let's just say manual trigger only. What action should, and you can pick whichever one you want. What action should be taken? Let's say I want to block the compromised account, notify the team, and so forth. So you just answer the questions. And now it's going to go, boom, create that playbook for me. So as powerful as this was, and as simple it is to use, the ability for it to, oh, I missed one of the questions. There we go. It's going to go now automatically create that playbook. So the ability to have the platform actually simplify just about everything that it does for you, as powerful as it is, the ability to actually now make it, using agentic AI, now doing many of the things that you had to do manually before, be able to do automatically, just makes it even more powerful. All right, so I just to highlight the goal of this was to show you what's new, where it fits in. I wanted to highlight a few of the existing things that people may not have been aware of that may have changed a little bit. We've got lots of down here in the administration and provisioning. They've basically created sections now where you can go in here instead of having a long list of everything. You go into each section and get the subsections. So, just simple little things, simple things that make it easier to navigate the platform and set things up. One other thing I'll just highlight here that I don't know if everybody's aware of, we do 90 days of hot storage in the platform of all security related information. But a lot of people need to store data, raw data longer for compliance. So, but instead of having to go out to another tool to look at that data, we built right in here into the platform this forensic analysis where now you can go query that external data right from here. Okay, so the platform has the ability to to store that data for the raw data wherever you need for as long as you need, and but you can come in here then and query that data. All right, I think that's my overview. I know the next session, again, Abhishek's going to go into pretty gory detail here on the autonomous SOC and how powerful it is. But I just wanted to highlight again that, Josh on his last talk there mentioned this, the ability for this, not just to automatically go out and fix and stop an alert, but to actually give you all the details, give an analyst all the details they need in real time so they can make a decision quickly and then they can decide what they want to do, right? That ability to get that done quicker, stop attacks, much more quickly is incredibly powerful. And it's probably one of the biggest value propositions I think the platform has, that the early detection, that very verbose description of what's happening and an overview of it, and then recommendations on what to do really, really helps anybody who's trying to deliver security services do it incredibly efficiently, cost effectively, and basically stop those attacks early. Okay, thanks for your time there. I'm sorry for the little delays I had, but hopefully that was a bit of an overview. And then again, you're going to get much more detailed overviews on the different sections from the different leads. Thank you.
Tom. Coming up next, we have the coming up next, I believe we have a quick poll, and then we'll have the autonomous SOC, how AI and SOAR 4.0 are transforming security operations with Abhishek Tripathi and Ashwani Upadhyay. Yeah. Thank you. Gentlemen, if you want to just start queuing up your presentation.
Sure, maybe. Meanwhile, can you enable for me to share the video? Somehow someone
Yes, Kriti, can
disabled it.
you make sure he can share his video?
It's still showing.
Once again.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kriti.
Yeah. And you can start, the poll can run in the background if you want to just start introductions and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. So hello everyone. This is Abhishek, and thank you for being here. Um, Today I want to show you something we have built, scripts and are running today, secure on AutoSOC. It is an autonomous SOC. Um, we we call it calibrated autonomous SOCs because in the past couple of sessions you must have heard that autonomous SOCs we are not claiming is possible. As per the Gartner also said the same thing. So it is an autonomous SOCs. In fact, calibrated autonomous SOCs, a team of AI agents that investigates every alerts, debates its own decision and conclusion, reaches a verdict backed by the evidence, right? And also, that's the kind of easy part. It also resolve the case. Resolve the case include various aspects like taking the appropriate actions also. Like if the alert is false positive, it will resolve it. That means close it. If that requires some of the action has to be taken, some remediation actions or some containment actions, it will also perform that. So resolve the case is a kind of bigger umbrella. It does all these within the guardrail that you set. Your SOC running at machine speed, again on your terms, whatever the perimeters you have defined. In the next 20 minutes, I will show you how this matter. Um, we'll walk one real case through the system end to end, and then we'll just also talk about the technology under the hood, and then possibly show you the live demo, right? So I hope that poll has ended. Now we can start.
Ed.
Okay. Yeah, so let's start. So with the problem, let's start with the problem. Let me be honest about the problem is not detection. Everyone detected nowadays. Like everyone claimed that hey, I detected this alerts and that alerts. The problem is everything after detections. When detections happen, what happens? What how the things done afterwards? Attacker breaks out in second, and I think you must have heard multiple people saying the same thing. But our response is still measured in hours. Your team receives thousands of alerts every week, and most of them are noise. That's where most of the complaint comes in, that most of them are false positive because of some or other reasons, because of every customer, every environment is different. So every triage, every correlations, and every action is still manual, right? And the result is burnout. People, the SOC person have a long queue, a good analyst drowning in a queue, right? Here is the uncomfortable truth which I just want to highlight, that every alert your team never reaches is a risk you are silently accepting. For example, if a SOC analyst having the 400 alerts, for example, the analysis of the first alert versus the analysis of the 400th alert will be totally different. If he reaches to the 400th alert by any chance, both will be different. So, but AutoSOC kind of treat all those alerts similarly. They look without being burned out, each and everything with the same detail, same process, and will have the same effect for first alert as well as the 400th alert. Now, let me tell you a short story. This is the kind of um, case statement. It's a Sunday, 2:14 in the morning. The attack just started and is, of course, AI driven nowadays. I think Joss and Chandra talked about a lot about that, that attacker is also using the AI to perform the attack. And these attacks are fully automated. So the question is your response, how is your response, right? Is your response is adequate? Maybe not. Let's look at it. On the left side, this is the most SOC today. At 2:14, the alerts fired and then came into the queue. Nobody's watching. At 6:30, on call analyst paged. He got a message, opens up six dashboard, start reassembling the stories by hand, looking at the multiple screens, and then finally he started working on the containment. Finally begins mid-morning. Hours after the record already finished his job, might finish his job because so much of time attackers got. Now on the right side, the same night, if the auto SOC is running at 2:14, the alerts cluster into one case and investigation started immediately. At 2:16, the verdict is in malicious. The host is isolated, the attacker IP is blocked, and the auto SOC verify that each actions actually landed. The false positive noise around it close automatically. At 8, your analyst opens a case that is already resolved, that has already everything ready to just review it and get aware that these are things that happen and AutoSOC has done these kinds of responses. But the point is that at any hours, investigated, contained, and resolved before the work day even began. And in the few minutes, I will show you the real system doing the exactly same. So let's talk about then what is AutoSOC. The simplest way I can say it is not another tool that alerts you. We have so many of them. Now we are creating something else. It is an analyst that resolve. It cluster thousands of raw alerts, became a handful of real cases. I will show you that what is the percentage of reductions over the during my demo. It investigate, it calls the domain expert, team of agents, crew of agents, gather evidences across the identity, network, cloud, endpoint, ITOT, and all the domains which is kind of already out there. It decides, and then the verdicts comes out of a structured debate with all reasoning on the records. And most important, it resolve. I'm emphasizing the resolve is again not just closing the alert. It does all the things which requires a human analyst will do, everything included in the resolve things. It closes the false positive, it remediates the real threat inside the perimeter that you have defined. The last word is the difference is the resolve again. The flow itself is simple. It never breaks into the separate tool. Raw alerts comes in, and your intake rules decide what deserve work. Related alerts cluster into one case per a real event. The agents team, the crew of agents debate and reaches to a verdict, and the case is resolved automatically inside your perimeter with human approval beyond it. If your rule says that for such things you need to have a human approval, you cannot go and automatically resolve it. Human need to approve it, otherwise it will be resolved automatically. Everything runs on secure unified platform and a unified data. So the no context is ever lost between the system. There are some cases where some of the context we can get from the third party external system, like the HR system and all those things, that's also can be integrated. For the detections, for the evidences, everything is there in the secure unified platform. So never know, so never the case that there's a context lost. So let me walk you through the one real case going through this exact flows. So in this real flows, imagine that 13 raw alerts came and that merged into the one case, right? And then there's a malware detections on several machines, login failure, the same attack patterns appearing across 4 hosts. AutoSOC recognize all of these as one event and raised one case. And then think about what is means for your analyst. Instead of 13 disconnected alert that someone has to piece by piece, they will go and together stitch together and make a decision. Here, everything is kind of already pre-built and presented to your analyst that these things has happened. The screen you are looking at it is just a real from the product. I will show you just during the demo. Now, the next step is that every verdict shows it works, not a black box. So our philosophy has been that whatever the agentic SOC agents are doing, it will be logged, it will be documented for any time the full audit. We believe that a human is going to look at it. The more data they see, the more confidence, the more easy for them will be to make a decision. So why should I trust this verdict? Because AutoSOC shows its work, there is no black box, and reasoning trails also, as I discussed, right? Then our four agents, hyper agents we call it, because hyper agent is like something just work. Imagine that a crew of agents. Our hyper agents comes in the picture, network, identity, and endpoint, and so on. Each ran their own investigations and then argued the verdict against each other. And then they will just kind of put all the verdicts in the right order and then with great detail so that anyone can audit. AutoSOX is only reason about the indicators that actually exist in this case. It cannot invent the evidence. You can trust a decision you can see. Now, here is where control comes in. AutoSOC recommends isolating three finance hosts to stop the lateral movement. That is high impact action. So under the customer rules, it is stop and wait for name analyst to grant or deny it because your rules is saying so. And meanwhile, the low risk cleanup already is happened. If the alert is kind of false positive, it will be automatically closed. If the alerts are kind of on a high severity critical system, it will wait for the human approval. So when we get to the live demo, I will just show you where the approvals comes and how you can grant it. But it just like it follow your rules, and anything that could touch your production, stop for the human, and also decide which is which. When you go to the demo, we'll just discuss these things. So so every case ends in one of three ways. Like a case will be created. So, and all threes are kind of listed as false positive, malicious, and need judgment. If it's a false positive, the case auto resolve. And here is the part most product misses. The product, our product is kind of also resolve the underlying alerts closed automatically based on the cases. The noise disappears from both the queues, from the cases as well as from the alerts before your team even sees that. If it's malicious, the offender itself remediated, host isolated, IP blocked, and if it's EDR, that users and then the host, everything can be isolated automatically. When it's fall inside your perimeter, you configured. And with the approval, when it's kind of need of approval, it will wait for the approvals also. So again, in this case, evidence, reasoning, and recommendation section will be listed. So in all these three states, if it's a false positive, all those things will be listed. So you can read it, you can go through that, and you have just one decision to make. And this follows our Oscar AV framework. I'm going to talk about what this framework, but Oscar AV, Oscar, possibly most of you are aware that or maybe know that Oscar has been kind of a framework there where most of the human SOC work on the Oscar. Oscar stands for obtain, strategize, collect, analyze, and report. It is how good analysts have investigated for years. So what the AutoSOC performs every one of these phases with agents. It obtains the case context, strategize which experts to involve, collect an evidence, analyze it through the structured debate, and report with a complete reasoning trail. But here are the things. Oscar ends at R, and that R is report. That means once the reporting is done, that goes in the queue, and then SOC has to work on it and then take care of the response part. But AutoSOC will not stop there. It added A and V. What A and V is: A for act, V for verify. So our AutoSOCs will also act. Act includes the execute, and that execution could be various of things, and also the verify. So the agentic SOC, the Sekion is internal IPs that we have extended the Oscar as Oscar AV for the agentic SOC. And AV is kind of act and verify. So act, possibly you all know what act means, that taking the actions. The verify is kind of very important in this framework, that whatever the agent's action has been performed, another agent will verify those actions. If I say, for example, if the host is isolated, okay, I send the command and I get a success that action is done. But our Oscar AV framework also verify that it's actually isolated or it's just I got a false success for whatever reason. So Oscar AV is the framework underneath our AutoSOC, and that's applies to each and every cases. Now let's open the hood. Um, what's are you looking is not one model guessing. So far in the everyone is having one agent making a decisions, and then it's just like simple that um, anyone one agent or one model will be just guessing, right? So in our case, it is a team. On the left, you see a coordinator, read that case, decide which expert this particular attacks need, and the factual evidence build and bundle is built for your live data before any AI start reasoning. In the middle, you see in the middle part, these are the hyper agent. You can think as a crew of agents, or maybe you can pick another term, agent team runs in parallel. The network hyper agent asks what this IP actually talks to. Is that a beacon or a scan? The identity hyper agents ask login from 8 countries in 1 hour. Is that a human or a script? The endpoint hyper agents ask what run on this host right after the successful login, right? So all these kinds of questions, like every Q agents have a different domain to investigate a case from, different perspective. And each agent itself is just not a kind of one brain. It's kind of debate. Crew of agents are debating against each other, and they are reaching to a conclusion by disagreeing with each other, right? So such kinds of crew we have kind of for cloud, for ITOT, for email, and all those domains experts are there. On the right, uh, uh, on the right side, all these crew of agents verdict will be given to the case our adjudicator, and everything will be taken, and then a final decision will be made. So the response is planned and executed based on the whatever the educator make a response and plan, that will be kind of part of the action, so that will be executed. And I will say one thing, that while all this framework is being executed, so one thing is for the engineers in the room is that these are all these investigations are durable. What it means is that if anything mid case restart or you perform some upgrade or something, the work resume exactly where it is stopped. So it's very durable and very stateful. So you never lose, no matter what you do, you never lose the entire framework execution. So um, let's think that way. So as I talk about the external system, so sometimes logs alone do not decide, right? For example, um, if user even on a shift, for example, the HR system knows that a 3 a.m. login from on-call engineers reads very differently than one from the someone from on the leave. So this is just a context that our auto socks and also integrate from the third party or external system to get more additional context, which kind of makes the detections or the case verdict more um, clear or more confident. So that part is also there. Your CMDB knows that whether a box is crown jewels or just a test VM. Crown jewels mean like it's critical system or just a test VM. Is this indicator known as a bad in the wild or it's clean? So all those things we can also integrate the third party systems, like you can have all your CMDB, HR system, and whatever you have, you can integrate through the MCP interface we have. Here is the inventions at the heart of the AutoSOC. We start from a single principle. One AI opinion is not a verdict. So every expert can become a courtroom. The prosecutors runs a full investigation with the real tools, right? And the defender runs on equal investigation, but is going to always use the same tool, same evidence, and looked opposite message. His job is to always do the opposite thing, that hey, this is not uh, not alert, right? And here's the key: neither of them is allowed to give a verdict. They return threat scores, cited evidence, nothing more than that. Then educator weigh both cases on the strength of their evidence, not on their confidence, and issues the verdict with every contradictions on the record. Why does this matter? Because a single model can talk itself into anything, but two investigators with opposite missions can not both be lazy, right? There's a term called groupthink, and most of you are aware. In the agentic SOC, that is a kind of very uh, uh, unavoidable problem is the groupthink. Groupthink is that if someone is working in the group, they have a pressure to always reach to a one conclusion, even they, they at cost of critical thinking. Like if I'm working in a group and then it's a group think is a problem that where you have to reach to a conclusion, you are putting somewhere aside that your critical thinking, you're not thinking each and every cases. So in AutoSOC, we have purposefully designed that particular things out. This is the kind of patent pending secure IP, and that's why our verdict hold up. Um, so there's one more assets here. The one you keep when analysts leave your team, their knowledge normally walks out of the door with them. AutoSOCs keep it. Every verdicts, every corrections, every environment's node is remembered and injected into the next investigation automatically. You can see it here. A recurring scanner confirmed benign once, applied to the 14th later cases. So all these kinds of learning, whatever the analysts have done, that's always systems uses that, and self-learn knowledge becomes smarter. So imagine that the AutoSOC turn on in your environment day 1 versus day 15 versus day 30 will be totally different. So it will be more smarter learning your environment, some of the custom things, some of the custom naming, some of your custom routine, or whatever things you have done. So it will learn. So this your analyst is not resigning, is here to stay. Let me give you three simple promises with this, which is very important with autonomous SOC, because industry is talking about autonomous SOCs and there's so much of gray area. Lot of vendors are saying that we have autonomous SOCs, but somewhere in the bottom they will show it's like human involved and all those things. Our philosophy is different. It's one that makes autonomy safe to run. It can never touch your system's firewall, gateway, critical services. A built-in guard blocks any actions against them. And it does not matter how confident the AI is, the rule always wins. So the rules always are logical things. It's like if it's always a binary. It's true or false. If the rules matches, then your things will be executed. If not, it will not be executed. It's not a kind of AI deterministic rules that sometime AI will always have, uh, always have kind of like fuzziness there. There are various circumstances make a decision. So here our rule is logical gate. The logical gate will pass or not pass. There is no other gray area for that. So so as per your rule, if you define your rule that hey, autonomous SOC do not have right, it will not do that. No matter how confident AI is, it's always follow your on real evidence. Every actions target things that really exist in the case. A real host, a real IP, a real file, right? If the AI invents a target, the system refuses to act, right? That's the guardrail is doing. Number three is it is off by default, and you turn it on for on each customers at your pace, and out of the box, it is very um, um, is very guarded, that it will always look at your major critical alerts. It does not look at the UDA alerts. It does not look at the minor alerts, but you have an options to enable for all those things. It does not perform any other remediation action on its own. It will always wait for the human approval. And then if there's something false positive comes up and the confidence is more than 75-80%, then it will go and resolve the case. So the out of the box, the rules are there. You do not have to do anything. You can just turn it on, experience it. And at your own confidence, at your own pace, you can move towards the autonomy. If you think that things are going good, and then you are getting all the details and everything is going good, you can always loosen the uh, the button, and then you can move towards autonomy, and then that's where the decision is that you can go full, or maybe you can have some uh, clamps there for yourself. Um, so again, I will just talk about that things which talks multiple time, that our philosophy is honest. A fully autonomous SOC is not a goal. Gardner is clear the security operations will never be fully hands off, and we agree. So this is calibrated autonomy. Auto SOC handles the routine, the triage, the enrichment, the known pattern containment that burns out your team. Human stays on the loop for the high stack decisions and need context and accountability. And the lines between these two, you set it per customer, per action type, start the conversation, and then watch it work, and then you can experience it. The one thing is that the auto SOC respect whatever the perimeters you have defined or decided. So that's the kind of clear line between autonomy and then autonomous SOCs and then what we are doing. Again, everyone is pissing about AI, ask what is actually does. Most of the vendors are still stuck at the AI copilot, that advice, and we have pretty much there. You can always experience it. Source playbook, I think Tom has touched little bit on that. That automatically playbook creation, everything is there. That's basically obey part. You have it. Now secure and auto socks is also resolved. So we have a secure and auto socks. That's the kind of uh, current latest in the market that you can use the auto socks there, right? A multi-agent team that investigate and debate and decides on acts. That's the auto soc, right? And deployment, on the deployment side is the easiest. The next time when you are upgrading your system with 12.2x or something, this will be automatically part of your system. It does not need any extra hardware. At least I will say that keep 10 to 15% room on that, but it does not need a separate server, separate deployment, nothing. It's already built into the unified platform. You just have to click a button on and then it will turn on. Even if you turn it on, you can always make a rule change that you do not want it to make any changes on your alert things. You can always make those changes, but out of the box, it will look at your false positive alerts, it will resolve it. So there's no harm. It's not going to do anything which is having the high blast radius out of the box. So it's pretty safe. You can just always turn it on and experience it. And then I generally think it's like maybe 15 to 30 days will be good enough for you to experience in your environment that how the system is behaving from day 1 versus day 30. It will be totally different, and then it's learn, and then a true path towards your autonomy of the system. Now, that's all from the presentation side. Now we'll jump to the demo. Yeah. Okay. So this particular dashboard, I'm sure that all of you must have seen multiple times. So I'm not going to take a lot of time to explaining this one because all understand this one. But this is a kind of very critical piece here that you look at the auto sock. Auto sock has 120K alerts. This 120K alerts is only major and critical. If you hover it, we are putting each and every details there. So you don't have to remember. You can just hover it, you'll get the details. So this much alerts, your SOC team has to look at it. And now with the auto SOC, that number come down to 75 here. Now I will explain how the 75 comes in. So 1.2K alerts goes into the auto SOC process or module. And then that further, the cases created, like out of the 1.2K alerts, the number of cases were created around 660 in the last 1 week. And out of the 660 alerts, 585 alerts went to our AutoSOC response orchestrator. And out of the 585, 583 alerts were automatically resolved. Okay. Now on the 2, it The AutoSOC response architecture were not able to decide. So it just says that, hey, let me send these two particular case to the human plate. So that's came inside this in this human SOC analyst thing. And AutoSOC at the beginning at 75%, that's came here. Now remember that 75% is not just AutoSOC is saying, hey, I cannot do that. 75 also include that the critical alerts or critical, not critical alerts, critical assets do not work on these assets. So those will also come under 75. So right now, 75 include that some of the AutoSOC, some of the alerts which AutoSOC were not able to reach to a decision, that goes in 75. And also based on the rule, like if the UDAs are there, UDA will not be processed by the AutoSOC, so that will also be listed in 75. So now here's you see 1.2K alerts. A human has to work on it, now 75 in 1 week. And out of the 75, two are malicious, which is kind of high priority items. SOC analyst has to look at it. Suspicious is that it could be, if all the evidence are there, a human have to make a judgment whether it's a false positive or not. And then inconclusive is like AI is not having enough evidence to make a conclusion. And that's kind of it came here. And you can see here 3 approvals waiting and all those things are here. Others are basically that's all in the queue and then waiting for the like if some cases are being worked on by the AutoSOC and that's stuck because of the it's waiting for the human approval, that goes in the other. As soon as you take an actions, that others will be become to 0 and then either will be go to the resolve or it for some reason if you do not take an actions approval expired, then it will stay in the malicious or suspicious based on the its severity. Now at the bottom you have some stats. So first 3 possibly you all know that alerts to case reduction is kind of 46% in this case. Resolution rate is 95%, and then auto resolve is 88%. So that's a really good number. So that's the kind of this thing. And from here, you can always click and go to our AutoSOC dashboard. That's where the real things start. So this dashboard, if I go and say in the last 24 hours, so in the last 24 hours, these are the stats. 141 alerts are triggered, and then it reduces to 100 cases. And out of the hundreds, 83 cases has been auto resolved, and 70 cases are open. And if you think that under the hood, there's also a mapping with the alerts. 83 cases mean 124 alerts. And then 17 cases means 23 alerts. So human has to only look at the 17 cases, and you can always look at it. The case awaiting 1, action failed 1, expired approval 6. Because if the approval is expired, we are kind of putting in open state because still human have to look at it. If the approval is done in a timely manner, this number would have been kind of 11 or so, right? So all these numbers may be sometime vary based on the human involvement. If the human has not acted on it, this number might go temporarily. But even with this case, you can see here that 8% only has to work by the human, 17 cases. And on this dashboard, you can see the accelerated to analyst, and then every data or every things which needs a human attentions that is being listed here. That's live dashboard. So your SOC team has to just put on a bigger screen and then watch it out. At this screen will speak what to do next. If something comes here in the case, your SOC team has to work on it. If some approval appears, you have to just go and just say, I want to look at the approvals. So approval are all listed here. They can work on it. Okay. And then here are some of the verdict that, suspicious is 13, inconclusive, and all those things are there. So idea is just your SOC team has to look at it, and then from there the system will guide that what to do next, because AutoSOC is working behind the scene, so it will. Now here is the button. We made it very easy that AutoSOC on and off. Right now it's on. If you do a off, it will become off. So just go here in the SOC dashboard and just click AutoSOC on or off. Now this is a dashboard. One of the very important dashboard, which is analytics dashboard. SOC dashboard, the objective is that your team has to look at the dashboard every is a kind of optional dashboard. But analytics dashboard will tell you some of the things what has AutoSOC has performed in the past. It give you an idea that how the AutoSOC is working. So the first stats in here is that verdict alignment. What verdict alignment mean is that if the auto SOC agents are reaching to a verdict alignment is telling that what is the agreement percentage where what AI said versus where what human said is matching. So that's called verdict agreement, and that is in this case 99.3%. We have second one is that what is the time return to a human SOC analyst per hour. So it's like 24 minutes analyst time freed. That means out of 1 hours, which generally without auto SOC, if it's working for 1 hours, for same alert or set of things, he need to work only for almost he got 24-minute free out of the 60 minute. So 60 minus 24 is what time he has to work for. And then you can see weekly capacity gained, like only like now in the week, a two kind of SOC, full-time SOC analyst you can we recover the time. So now without auto SOC, say for example, um, X number of SOC were working. Now with this auto SOC, you need to have X minus 2 number of SOCs, but in this environment, in this particular case. So all these things are stats are listed. Average mean time of analysis, 2.46 minute, verdict confidence, credit per case analyzed is average. And then you can see the noise closed by the auto SOC. All those analytics which you want to see maybe at the end of the day or end of the week, that will be listed here. And then the SOC is a dashboard which we have to keep an eye all the time. Now that's the kind of executive side of things. Now possibly you might be having the question that where is the case? So let's go in the case. So in the case, you can always click here that you get something here, you click on the case, and then you will land on the case page. Now, these are the cases. You can see how, here that in the last 24 hours, 0 malicious case, 13 suspicious, 4 inconclusive, and then 83 false positive, right? Each cases can have more than one alert associated with each. You can see here a column, and then you can sort it out, and you can see here that the max is that one particular this false positive case has 9 alerts associated with them, and all 9 were kind of resolved. Just if you click on it, you go here, you will see all those real 9 alerts, which possibly you familiar with this view that this is our alert analysis view. And then you scroll here, you see all these alerts are closed. See here. Now you wanted to see those one, you can always click here and see the exact alert analysis view which Tom worked just demonstrated this piece. And now if you go in the action history, you will see the detail that earlier AutoSOC has worked, then added a case into it. And when the verdict is made, and then when the autonomous SOC work, it put a case that what is exactly happening, why I'm closing it. So it's closed alert, right? So the same, pretty much same thing has been performed for all 9 alerts here. So one case which was turned out to be false positive by our AutoSOC that resolved all the alerts underneath it, and then that's a decision taken, right? Now you need to, as a SOC, you need to have, you might be having a question that how I believe that, hey, whatever false positive the decision is it, how I will get the, how will I get to know that whether it's a true or false, or how will I get the confidence that whether the job is done is accurate or not? For those things, we have a great detail, extensive trail logging listed here. So at the first decision, you have to just look at it, how the decision was reached. It's so much of text, so I'm not reading it out, but it put each and every details that what this alert is all about, what the alert claimed, what the evidence showed, why this verdict, and then exactly what has happened and key evidences. And then last, we talked about the Oscar AV framework. Oscar AV framework, it is on the act, it's not verified yet. So it's verified. Is it the verified, right? So in every day-to-day life, an analyst has to read about the decision, how the decision, everything is made, and then that will give a pretty much good idea that why this alert has been marked as a false positive alert, and you stop your investigation there, or you make a decision, and then you can submit the feedback that whether you agree or you don't agree, basically during your review. Now that's a decision, that's the kind of decision was being narrated to you. Now you say I want to get into detail how you reach to this decision. What agent has done, what is their verdict, what evidence they have looked at it. Now, for those details, you have to look at the agent investigation. So that's going to be a little bit um, put more cognitive load on human mind. But most of the SOC analysts will love to see that exactly what has happened, why this verdict has been raised. I'm not expecting that everyone is going to do for every case, but at any point of time, if you need to go in that details, most welcome, you can always go there. Now look here, that investigation lead. Now, lead is the one who make a decision that based on the case and attached alerts, based on the type, based on the entity type and attack type, what are the expert has to be invoked. Now you see here, it will list down that looking at the alerts, 9 hosts, the investigation lead requires that email and endpoint agent has to be invoked. Why it has invoked, it listed here. You can just read out. I will. I just love reading all these details, and then it helped me to understand more that why agent is thinking that way. Now, after that, all these two agents will run parallel and independent. Both are kind of, there's no correlation between this and this. Both works in their own perimeter, their own specialized domain, and they will kind of give their verdict. Now, let me open one of them. If you open one of them, now you will get to know that while investigating this case, what are the things they have gone through, right? So they discussed that, think as a kind of courtroom, that this hyper agent is a crew of agents. One is kind of acting as a prosecutor, one is acting as a defender, and they will kind of argue their stance. And at the end, all those, their verdict will be given to the judge in simple language, but here we are referring as a educator, which will look at these things and make the final decisions. As I stated in my PPT, that these agents are kind of not going to make a decision. These agents are going to put their finding, and the educator will be there who will be making the decision. So you can always look at it, the decision educated from the debate. If you want to look at the debate, you can look at here debate. In the debate, you see each and every detail, that what evidence, what they have looked at it, and you can see great details here. Now, if you are, if you just want, most of the time, you just need to check the, what is the educator verdict is. You can hear defender evidence is more concrete and directly actionable. Analysts have repeatedly closed non-identical suspicious similarities, this and this. So if you look at your past analysis, whatever the alerts you have analyzed, whatever the comments you have put, it will also consider those as a learning, and then utilizing that piece, as well as it utilizes what is the evidence present in the case. Looking together, it will make a decision. So now here, it made a decision that this is a low threat and he is 65% confidence, right? And now hyper agent is, endpoint agent is saying this is also low threat and it is 7% confidence, right? And now our agent, the chief analyst agent, look at the verdict from both the experts, and you click on here, and you will see that what chief analysts have decided. He says that email agent saying overturn the alert, low threat 65% confidence. Endpoint agent saying, it's again saying it's not alert, so it's a good case. Low threat, 87% confidence. Now in the chief analyst has sided with the endpoint agent, and it says that, hey, looking in all those arguments from both the expert panel, I'm making my decision. This is the false positive, and I'm having a confidence of 83%, right? So all these details are listed here, and then finally the alert has been marked as a false positive, and it also suggests the response actions. If you look in the response action, it says that mark false positive and then comment, right? And then that's done. The case is done now. Now, as a SOC, you wanted to come and analyze these things. You wanted to give the verdict, come in the analyst note, and then here you can add your note also. That closes false positive, you agree, your disagreement, and that drives a lot of stats. Now, we felt that this kind of getting great detail, because our philosophy is that putting the details, putting the great trails of logs and everything will help the SOC analyst to verify each and everything. And then it will allow for SOC analyst to save the time. We also added a chat button. Now this chat is going to be kind of constrained in this particular case only. So if you ask any question, like for example, you have some question that why agent is making this decision, why agent not making that decision, or if you have some questions, some follow-up, you can always ask your question, because that's kind of another interface where human is kind of mostly involved with chatting. So you can ask your questions and you'll get the answer in like your chat. So you don't have to kind of roam around. You just ask a question, it will get you the answer. If you follow that entire process, excuse me, you can very well. Otherwise, you can ask the question, right? Now that is the false positive case. Now let me pick one suspicious case. Um, the process pretty much same. I just wanted to show you the decision, that what is the decision has been made. You can see here that at the top, a specialist agent disagreed, verdict rest on the coordinator educator, right? So this is the chief analyst. And if you look at his decision, the network agent is saying low threat, 62%, and an endpoint is saying none threat, no threat at all, is having 82% confidence. But the educator comes in and says that this is suspicious, need to have the human involvement, and then look at these aspects and make a decision. And all those things are listed here. So human has to just come, human SOC has to come and then look at here and make a judgment, whether it's you wanted to make a resolve or what. So that's the kind of the cases, right? And now if you go here, there are rules, the rules I talked about. In the rules, you can define the rules, the set of rules, do something, filter alert, control your access. This is self-explainable. I'm not going to spend time, but these are kind of perimeters you define. Out of the box, you don't have to do anything. But at some point, if you wanted to move towards more autonomy, you can just utilize these rules and then you can do everything. Analyst effort, environments note, it's a self-explainable. You can always put your environment context and everything. Connector, which I talked about, you can add various connector. It could be threat intel, TIP, if you something outside. Maybe if you wanted to connect with some SIM, that's another question. So I know many partners has asked that, can I connect to the other SIM? Yes, of course. You can connect with the CrowdStrike and everything through the MCP, identity, LDAP, ADP, HR system, CMDB, all those things you can connect, and then agent is automatically going to identify and then going to use it. And then last one is the approval, which I just like show you here. So when the approval is pending, you will get the details here, and then you can grant and deny. And then you can see the expired approvals and everything. So those are kind of pretty much, you all understand. The last piece in this one is the AutoSOC memory, which is very important, and that's called self-learning. The more time system is spent in environment, the more smarter it become. Smarter means it will learn more about your environment and become more aligned to your need. So that's what the memory comes from. So that's pretty much from this demo. Thank you all. Back to you, Maggie.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Abhishek. Moving right along, next up, we have a quick poll, and then we will have simplifying compliance from framework requirements to automated execution, CMX 360 with Shikha, Suryansh, and Shreyansh.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Shikha. I'm the VP of Product Strategy and Operations here at Sekion. Thank you so much for joining us from around the globe. Super, super grateful to have so many of you joining us in these sessions. If you saw me yesterday, I was talking about the AI Battlefield and AI Trism and one of our newest ADMP tools. And today, before two of our incredible engineers walk you through CMX 360, I'm going to be sharing a few words about the module and its value add. So let's go ahead and get started. I hope you can see my screen. Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So every organization we talk to has that same hidden problem. Their SOC team and their compliance team are running two completely separate operations, and neither one can see what the other is doing. So your SIM and your EDR analysts are watching real-time telemetry, chasing alerts, hunting threats, but they don't have visibility into whether any of that activity maps to a regulatory control. Meanwhile, your compliance team is sitting on a static GRC tool, uploading PDFs and screenshots once a quarter, and they're completely blind to what's actually happening on the network right now. The gap that I just talked about is where actual risk lives. It's why companies pass an audit in March and then get breached in April. And it's why breaches turn into regulatory fines, and on top of everything you're going through with the incident itself. CMX 360 is an incredible platform built to really close that gap, not by bolting a GRC tool, but by unifying cyber threat management and AI-driven compliance governance into one specific platform. And how do we do that? Three things make that possible. I'm going to talk about it more in the next few slides, but we support around 40 plus global frameworks, CMMC, DORA, NIST2, ISO, SOC, you name it, all sorts of regional defense standards. So you're not starting from zero on any mandate your clients face. And our Sarah AI engine ingests policy evidence. Actually eliminating extremely manual document review entirely. On top of that, our continuous control monitoring binds live SIM and EDR telemetry directly to specific compliance controls. So instead of an annual audit scramble, right, you have continuous defensible proof of compliance every single day. So what does that actually look like next to what's on the market today? Let's compare. So in this slide, let's take a look at the market as it exists today, right? So on one side, you have these traditional GRC tools, Vanta, ServiceNow. They're all good at one thing, sort of collecting static uploads. Someone manually drags a policy PDF into a portal once a quarter, right? And then they have a zero connection to what's actually happening in your security stack. And then on the other side, you have SIM and XDR tools, Splunk, CrowdStrike, Sentinel. They're collecting log events, but they have no concept of a compliance control, no policy engine, nothing that speaks the language of an auditor. CMX 360 is the only platform that does both natively. It's not even an integration. So like I said, traditional GRC tools take static uploads, but CMX is different because we bind policy documents plus real-time telemetry together. Where nobody in the market right now is doing AI policy gap evaluation, our Sarah AI engine runs 100% relevant scoring against every single control automatically. And the best GRC tools on the market right now offer basic markdown generation. We have a branded controlled docx policy generator that produces audit-ready documents automatically. And let me also say this, right? Neither category has any agentic AI story right now, but we have a native MCP. AI agents can actually take action inside the platform. This last point I just made matters more than it actually sounds, right? Because this means there's closed loop remediation. Sarah AI doesn't just flag a policy gap and hand it to you on a to-do list. It guides the instant document update and reevaluates automatically until you are able to hit that 100% compliance. And let me give you an example too. If you joined us yesterday, right, you saw the presentation from TopNet's Yazid, who talked about his audit with the NCA. So Saudi Arabia's National Cybersecurity Authority, NCA, divides Managed Security Operations Center, MSOC, licensing into two distinct compliance tiers. Tier 1 for government and critical national infrastructure, and then Tier 2 for commercial and private entities. Yazid presented yesterday that with Sekion CMX 360, they hit 100% pass rate for their audit in Tier 1 and around 97% in Tier 2. And it was also mentioned yesterday that that has never happened before. Not a single entity has had such a high pass rate in the history of that audit. And this was possible with Sekion CMX 360. So with that said, let me tell you more. What does that mean for your business, specifically with you as a partner? Let's talk about P&L. I'm going to give you an example. You're sitting on a 50 billion plus combined global cybersecurity and GRC market. Most of us today are only monetizing one half of it. The MDR, the SOC as a service half, whatever. CMX 360 lets you expand into the other half without building a new practice from scratch. And here's how that plays out in 3 ways. First, high margin CSAS. You can extend your existing MDR relationship into a compliance as service idea seamlessly, because the telemetry you're already collecting for threat detection is the same telemetry that feeds into the compliance engine. Crazy, right? And then 10x audit speed. Number 2, automated policy generation and Sarah AI scoring take audit prep from months down to minutes. That's not even like a marginal improvement. That's greater than 90% reduction in audit prep time. And 3, high retention and ARR. So what does that mean? Once a client is running DORA, ISO, whatever, on one platform with you as the operator, right? You're no longer a vendor, you're embedded into their risk governance function. Then it's easy to then copy and paste and make this a repeatable process for more customers and enable a multi-year contract with your clients. This helps you make more money. And another thing I also want to mention, Chandra actually talked about this in the morning. We're working with a partner in Ireland who has 40 plus credit unions running on Sekion's platform for their SOC today, Infinity. And their next challenge is DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. For anyone who hasn't run into this yet, DORA is EU's framework for financial sector cyber resilience. So it essentially requires regulated entities to be able to prove that they can withstand and respond to ICT-related disruptions and cyber incidents, all by January of 2028. That's coming up in a year and a half, right? And here's what that looks like end to end with us. On the technology side, Sekion does the heavy lifting. We ingest the real-time telemetry. We bind it to specific DORA controls, right? And continuously score where they stand. But the platform is only half the story, and we don't hand you a dashboard and walk away, leaving you completely confused and overwhelmed. We build the actual audit reports with you, right? We sit down with your compliance and your IT teams on the people and process side, walking you through the entire audit from start to finish. We help you generate the documentation and make sure every section, every mandate, every policy gets checked off. It's genuinely like we're your compliance buddy, okay? Not just a piece of software that we're just giving you, leaving you to figure it out, right? That's what I think really makes this partnership valuable. And let me also back what I'm saying with where the market is heading. So I talked about this yesterday. The global cybersecurity market is growing from 270 billion right now, right, to 552 billion between 2026 and 2031. On top of that, the GRC software market is growing at a 12% rate through 2031. And the fastest growing segment inside all of this is compliance automation, which is growing at a 31.7% rate CAGR. That's the exact segment that CMX 360 was actually built for. So let me say this again. Let's look at where that leaves the competitive landscape, right? You plot real-time threat detection on one axis and compliance depth on the other, and you'll see traditional SIM and XDR players, Splunk, CrowdStrike, whoever, strong on detection, but weak on compliance depth. I'm looking at this map here on the left-hand side, right? And then traditional GRC players, you got the Vantas, you got the Dratas, strong on compliance depth, but essentially really absent on real-time detection. CMX 360, though, sits alone in that upper right. We're on both axes. Nobody else is really occupying that space right now. And your next sort of question might be, okay, all that market opportunity only matters if it converts to real dollars. What do I do with this information, right? So let's put some hard numbers next to this to explain ROI, because nobody cares about anything else anymore except ROI, right? A traditional manual audit will take you, 3 to 6 months of consultant work? But with CMX 360, that same audit prep drops significantly, 95% reduction. Annual audit cost runs anywhere from 100 to 250K. With CMX, it's already included in the platform, which means hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings. And to talk about that auditor sort of review friction, we see normally weeks of emails going back and forth chasing evidence. With CMX 360, we cut that down, that really drawn out sort of cycle exponentially. And for MSSP partners specifically, reselling software today nets you a 15, 25%, 30% margin, but delivering compliance as a service on this platform can net you 60 to 70% plus margins. You do this as an add-on, that's like 3 times the profit on the same client relationship. That's how you really make this valuable. And let me show you exactly what that will look like. You're going to see this in action when our 2 engineers who've built this platform, Shreyansh and Suryansh, present their presentation and demo. You'll see all of this in action, but let me sort of set the stage. 3 things make this dashboard different from a static compliance spreadsheet. It's board ready. This 1 C-suite percentage really helps replace a raw control, pages of sort of raw control logs and all sorts of information that nobody outside the compliance team even reads, right? And it gives instant auditor verification, direct links to the underlying docx evidence, the Sarah AI score, and the SIM proof behind every number, so an auditor can actually self-serve and understand instead of really waiting for your team. And then for MSSPs, it's a multi-tenant overview. You can compare compliance posture across every client account side by side from this single pane of glass. So that's CMX 360, helping you pass your compliance audit, giving your SOC team, your compliance team, your board, your auditor metrics they can all finally agree on. I'm going to now hand it over to Suryansh and Shreyansh, who are experts in this space, and they're going to walk you through these awesome capabilities. Thank you so much for being here. Suryansh and Shreyansh, the floor is now yours.
To add before they share their slides, go ahead, guys,
Sure.
share it, because Aziz, in their audits, they are able to do the things which normally auditor used to take multiple weeks, was done into 2 days. So that was something was also there, that they were able to show everything. And that's why basically it's like, not only they got the 100% score or 97% for tier 1, but they were also able to get done with their work within 2 days, which most of the people takes 3 weeks to do it. So that's something was also they had shared with us. I just wanted to share that, hey, there is a proof is already there. It's not something just like theoretical. Go ahead, guys, take it over.
So thank you, Shikha. As we just saw, organizations today are facing increasing compliance requirements while also dealing with evolving cyber threat. Shikha explained why a unified platform like CMX 360 is important and business value it brings. Now let me take you through how a CMX 360 actually works. I will walk I will walk you through the workflow, the key capabilities we have built into the platform, and how they simplify compliance from framework selection all the way to audit-ready evidence. So the theme of today's presentation is simplifying compliance from framework requirement to automated execution. The idea behind CMS 360 is very simple. Instead of treating compliance as a periodic activity that starts only when an audit is approaching, we help organization maintain continuous compliance throughout the year. By combining live telemetry, AI assistant, evidence validation, and centralized compliance management, CMS 360 reduces manual effort while making organization continuously audit ready. So here what I will be covering. First, we will briefly revisit the compliance challenges. Then look at the end-to-end workflow inside CMS 360. After that, I will introduce some of the new capabilities we have added to the platform and explain how they improve the compliance process. Finally, once we have covered these concepts, Shreyansh will demonstrate them live. So organization today have to comply with multiple frameworks, each with its own set of control and documentation requirement. The biggest challenges isn't collecting evidence, it's managing it. Evidence is often spread across different systems, email, documents, and security tool. As a result, compliance teams spend a significant amount of time searching for information instead of focusing on improving security. So CMX 360 addresses these challenges by bringing everything together into a single platform, making evidence collection, validation, and reporting much more efficient. So what exactly is CMX 360? CMS 360 acts as a continuous compliance operating layer within the Sikian platform. The workflow starts with activating the required compliance framework and understanding the organization current readiness. Next, evidence is collected. Technical control use telemetry, while policy-based control are supported through document upload and templates. SERA AI then reviews the submitted evidence, identifies any missing information, and provide guidance before the evidence reaches an auditor. Finally, organization can generate dashboard, report, and evidence bundle that are ready to share during audit. So we begin by selecting a compliance framework. The control are then categorized into technical and non-technical control because each type of control require a different validation approach. Evidence is collected after automatically through telemetry or manual efforts. Uploaded document and templates. Once the evidence is available, SEDA AI evaluates its identify and any gaps and provide recommendation to improve its quality. Finally, the auditor workflow help track the review process, and the completed reports and evidence bundles can be exported whenever required. This structured workflow makes the compliance much simpler and significantly reduce manual efforts. One of the key strengths of CMS 360 is the way it handles technical and non-technical control. Technical control are validated using live telemetry and KPI mapping. Uh, if the required security data is already available, compliance can be demonstrated automatically. If the data is missing, the platform clearly indicates which telemetry needed to be ingested. For non-technical control, user can upload their own document or generate template directly within CMS 360. Organization detail entered once can be reused across multiple templates, reducing repetitive work and ensuring consistency. Together, these two workflows provide a complete compliance solution through a single dashboard. To make compliance even more efficient, we have introduced several new capabilities. The organization profile wizard captures company information once and automatically reuse it across policy templates. The policy templates engine helps user generate audit-ready documentation quickly. The Help Me with Evidence feature guides user on exactly what evidence is required for each control. SEDA AI review upload documents, identify gaps, and suggest improvement before audit. Finally, the auditor workflow and enhanced export option make collaboration reporting and audit preparation much easier. So overall, CMS 360 transformed the way organizations approach compliance. Instead of relying on disconnected system and manually preparing for every audit, organization can continuously monitor compliance, reuse technical evidence, simplify policy management, and improve evidence quality with AI assistance. This only reduces manual effort. This not only reduces manual effort, but also helps organization stay audit ready at all the time. With all the overview of workflow and key capabilities, I would now like to handle it to Shreyansh, who will demonstrate these features live and show how they work within the CMX 360 platform.
Shreyansh, you are in mute, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Suryansh. I'm Suryansh Chaturvedi. So far, we have talked about why compliance is hard and how CMS 360 solves it conceptually. Now, let me actually show it to you live. So, CMS 360 combines continuous telemetry monitoring, AI-powered evidence validation, auditor workflows, policy management, and automated reporting to help organizations stay continuously compliant instead of preparing only when an audit is approaching. So this is the main dashboard. The tagline here sums it up. It's AI first GRC that auto uses your telemetry for effortless continuous compliance. And really this platform rests on three pillars of value. First, the telemetry that is already flowing into Sikion automatically covers your technical controls. Second, your own document or our built-in templates flows out the people and process controls. And third, our AI engine Sera, which verifies everything and auditor tracks it through a workflow. And it all rolls up into exports you can hand straight to an audit team. So let's start with framework. Up top, you have got a search box, so you can just type CIS or name of any compliance, you can go there. And here next to it, you have got filters by status, active or inactive, by sector, financial, healthcare, government, and so on. And there is clear filter option if you want to reset and start over. So CMS 360 currently supports 43 compliance framework covering global regulatory requirements. Here, 4 are still on right now, that are CIS, EU DORA, ethics, and CRF, and the other 39 are just sitting there ready to enable the moment you need them. And active just means the program is actually running on your tenant and its percentages are being tracked live. Inactive means it's available in the catalog. You literally click the badge, confirm yes, and it goes active. Organizations only enable the framework that apply to their business. For example, in United States, we support CIS control, NIST, HIPAA, PCI DSS, SOC 2, and etc. In Europe, we support DORA, NIST 2. In Middle East, we support ethics, ECC, SAMA. In India, we support RBI, SEBI, CSCRF, IRDAI, and DPDP. Every framework includes its control, evidence requirement, AI validation, reporting, and audit workflow. Every card here shows you the same thing, the framework's logo, name, a sector tag, an active or inactive badge. You can click to toggle a short summary with a read more link and two progress rings, evidence collected and covered controls, which is how many controls have any proof behind them at all. Now we see evidence list. Before we go deep into a framework, this sits at the home level across everything. It's one single grid of every document uploaded across every framework you are running. You have got which framework it belongs to, the upload date, who uploaded it, any notes, and AI relevance score, status. Basically, how well Sarah thinks this document matches the controls it's attached to. An AI assessment is status of passed, failed, or not verified. And an AI verdict, you can click. This tells you that how this document satisfy this control. And also view and download buttons by which you can see the which document is uploaded from here, and after you want, if you want to see after download, you can download it from here also. So separately, you have got the auditor's own status pending, in progress, or done, which you can change with a click, and then the file itself will download and view action. It's sortable, filterable, and traceable, so it behaves like a proper spreadsheet. Now, before I open a framework, let me explain the math behind these evidence collected and covered controls. So covered controls is that are either telemetry backed or have a document divided by total controls. This represents the percentage of compliance controls that already have sufficient proof. Proof can come from two different sources. First, technical controls can be satisfied automatically using telemetry. So second, process or people controls can be satisfied through uploaded evidence. So CMS 360 combines both into a single compliance view. Now, evidence collected is controls with a document divided only by the controls that actually needed one. Telemetry controls are excluded here. So now let's actually see this in action on two live framework. Let's start with CIS controls. So CIS is a cybersecurity best practice framework. It consists of multiple control families covering areas such as asset management, vulnerability management, and incident response. On the right side, you have got the framework summary and the specific control set tags for CIS, confidentiality, integrity, availability, governance, and risk management. On the left, you can see evidence collected card. You will see the percentage, that's 97%, and underneath it, the evidence test score, which is Sarah's pass rate, sitting at 100%. There is also a progress bar for testing, which shows how many documents have been run through for uploads, which shows how many of the controls that actually needed a document now have one. Now here you can see the green telemetry is at 32%, roughly 49 controls out of 153. That's telemetry doing the work entirely on its own. It not require any uploaded document, nothing manual. The platform is simply reading events from environment our environment and recognizing that a control is satisfied. And blue 97% is percentage of control completed through uploaded document. Now here we are giving you exports because this is where the platform turns into actual audit fact. There are 4 options. Export summary gives you a CSV with 1 row per control with all evidence for that control combined into that row. It is good for a tracker or an executive gap list. Export details, it gives you a CSV where every single document gets its own row under its control. That's for a line by line auditor review. Export PDF gives you the compliance summary metrics plus live telemetry tables for any technical control whose KPI is ready. It generally covers roughly the last 30 days. That's the one you had hand to a board or a regulator. And export evidence bundle, it gives you a full zip file with every evidence document organized into folder plus a manifest that indexes everything inside. That's your formal audit submission pack. So I will show you this. This we got from export PDF. So this is CIS control. It's summary now. There are 74 technical controls here. 49 are compliant, 49 controls with live data, and 57 ready KPIs. So here you can see the controls and with its live data. So it is for all. And now let's actually navigate the controls. Up top, you have got a search box where for control IDs or text type filters for technology, process, and people controls with count next to each and an evidence status filter OK where versus needs evidence. On the left, you have got the 18 requirements families, inventory of assets all the way through the penetration testing. And you can expand any category to see the individual control rows underneath. Whenever a row has a green check mark like this, it means with it is telemetry capable. Let's open one of those. This is the telemetry tab. It shows you an ingestion, a status of ready. It's about whether the actual required event types are flowing in or not. Once a KPI is ready, you get a live chart generated from the exact same events your Sequence SOC is already analyzing. If nothing is flowing yet, you will see an empty state prompting you to go to upload evidence instead and get it verified by Sarah, like in process and people controls. So now let's look at people and process. At top, there is a button called Help Me with Evidence. That's AI guidance telling you exactly what kind of evidence this control needs and where the gaps are. So it will take time to give. Till then, we see how we upload the evidences. When you go to add evidence, you get the 2 parts. The first is I have my own document, and the second one is use Sequence template. First, we will discuss about how I have my own document. If you have your own document, you can upload an existing file. It may be PDF, Word. So you can upload it from here. Then it will hit upload and Sarah checks both relevance and authenticity, which takes about 3 to 4 minutes. And it will give a score like here. And second path is use a, so here it comes, help me with evidence. So which type of evidence this control needs, it is told here and where is the gap. So you can review this. And if you want to make your own document to upload by yourself, you can make a document after reviewing this one. So if you want to use our own Sequence template, which walks you through a step-by-step wizard, first you select the template. Here a policy, whatever fits the regulatory basis you need, then you fill in your organization info once the legal name, address, regulatory authority, signatory, and it's saved for reuse across every future template. Here we filled our, and if you want, you can fill yours also. Then you fill in document specific field like the signatory name, effective date, and version, and generate a preview. And if you want to sign it offline, then you can download it from here, and after that sign it and then upload from here. If you want to upload our document, you can just click here and you can upload it from here. Now what Sarah goes and runs it up and runs it for 3 minutes, and after that it will give a score like here it is given. So now this is
Key things I'd like to highlight. I know we discussed it yesterday as well as today a little bit. For the compliance is a big burden for many of the organizations. The big organization, they spend millions of dollars. They have a dedicated people in the organization. They just deal with that. Many organizations, they don't have those peoples. And as a new requirements are coming, they have to spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes multiple hundreds, to just get the people to bring those GRC label like documents. And that's where Sika was presenting. There are set of the tool, which may be Data, Vanta, Archer, and many other ones in there. They just do that part in there. And then you have to have a SIM. Somebody will have to still kind of work together, chase many, like 20, 30 people in the organization to get the answer. When the auditor comes, it is a 2-3 months of exercise to get through that. What we did is, previously, if you remember, we were always giving you option to upload your document. We were guiding it. Now what we did it, based on the feedback we got from the real customers, that look, we need a option to have a SecCan already have the kind of those documents ready, and we want to make sure we assign the right set of the people who are the owner of those people and processes documents. HR is taking care of HR, security is taking care of security, financial people are taking care of finance, and then administrator taking care of administrative job. Those ones you can create it now using the platform created for you. You label it properly, you get people to own and sign it. It's all done automatically in the platform. So all of your people, process, and technology, even with the report, what Gitesh was talking about, all that comes directly from the platform. So where you are spending not only is like anywhere from $250,000 to multiple $1 million, and having a big team, and nobody likes to go through the audit process and all that in there, because you have to chase many things and still you get back and forth emails going. All of that, we have done something which nobody else can do in the industry, because either you are one side, GRC side, or you are evidence on the digital side. Nobody brings it together. Nobody kind of file up into the right set of the buckets to meet those compliance. One biggest thing is we are not just driving the compliance. The whole goal is we are making a compliance and the cybersecurity go hand in hand, which nobody else is doing, because you can be compliant, but you may not be secure. Now, what we are driving it, security and compliance, they go hand in hand. And you are able to not only be the best secure, but even for the compliance, we are making a life life easier for those people who are involved with it. Plus, everybody has like win-win situation. Our partners, customer, and us, we working together to create that win-win, so that we all that hassles and fear of I have to comply to this particular standard, that standard goes away. So that's what basically what is happening over here. And definitely many partners have been kind of driving this, and the customer that, hey, this is something if you can do, we don't have $500,000 to spend, but we can spend like $150,000 and then be kind of in a good shape. And that's what has been done over here, guys. So I just want to make sure you guys understood that a lot of new compliance, implementation takes a lot of time and resources and money, and that we have made it kind of possible in the platform automatically. Okay. So that's what is going on. There is a lot of work goes on behind the scene to make it possible, guys. Thank you. Keep on going, Shreyans. Yeah.
Now this is documentless, which is the framework specific version of what we saw earlier at the home level. Same AI column, the auditor pending in progress, and built-in viewer, so you can open it from here and open the words, excels, or any file you uploaded it. You can download it from here also, and if you want to delete it, you can delete it from here. So the full life cycle is upload the document, Sarah scores it, you get the AI insights, the auditor sets the status, and then it all rolls into your export and out to the audit. And just to be clear about Sarah, this isn't some chatbot on the side. It scores whether a specific file actually proves a specific control, and that scores follows the document everywhere it appears. In the upload notice, in the evidence test, in the AI relevance score, in pass, fail, in the full AI assessment status, and it recommends you collect next. Now we will discuss about DORA. So DORA is the Digital Operational Resilience Act. It is built for financial services, completely different shape compared to CIS. Since the framework is different, the user experience remains exactly the same. Same for export options as before. Same here, summary and evidence collected, and here green telemetry as we discussed, blue telemetry as we discussed. And there are 5 pillars of DORA. ICT risk management, incident management, operational resilience testing, third-party risk management, information sharing. CMS 360 tracks compliance across all 5 pillars in real time. This framework also demonstrates the flexibility of CMS 360. Technical controls are validated automatically using telemetry, like here, and process and people controls are validated through evidence and AI verification. Regardless of the framework, users always follow the same consistent workflow. So at the end, what we are really giving you is personal support on the people and process side, genuine automation on the technology side, and a clear exportable path all the way through to your actual audit. That's AI compliance CMX 360. Thank you all.
Thank you. I believe that wraps up that presentation. All right, I think we have a poll coming up, and then next we are going to have Joshua Ward of Obvium with a partner session. Joshua, are you on deck?
Ready to go.
Fantastic. Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start up your screen and begin to introduce yourself.
yeah.
You don't need to wait for the end of the poll.
All right. Let me get the slideshow started up so you're not just looking at my notes.
Sure thing. All right.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to stare at my notes. All right, so today what I want to go over is, and unfortunately I am following on the coattails of 3 very incredibly knowledgeable people from Sekion. I do want to follow up and just continue our discussion about CMX 360. Before we get into any capabilities, dashboards, or the specific product features, I do want to frame that my portion of today's discussion as an operating model conversation rather than a traditional technology demonstration. We've already seen that. They did excellent work. I do not want to try to follow on the shoulders of giants here. The question we're ultimately trying to answer is a simple one. How do we convert the security activity that's already taking place across every client's enterprise into evidence that an auditor, a regulator, the customer themselves, board members, or executives can trust? So for most organizations, the challenge is not a lack of security controls, it's a lack of monitoring tools, the telemetry sources, the policies, and the compliance frameworks that all work together. And in fact, many organizations have invested heavily in those areas over the last decade. The challenge itself is that security activity and compliance evidence often remain disconnected, just like Shika said at the beginning of her demonstration. Security teams may know that those controls are functioning. The operations teams may know that those systems are being monitored. The risk teams may know that assessments are being conducted. But when an audit, certification review, customer questionnaires, or regulatory examinations occur, organizations frequently find themselves having to reconstruct evidence manually, collecting screenshots, gathering reports, chasing system owners, validating point-in-time control assertions. And what's missing is not necessarily more security. What's missing is what CMX 360 offers, a reliable, repeatable, and defensible evidence chain that demonstrates how security operations support the obligations that every organization is required to meet. So why does this matter now? This challenge has become increasingly important as regulatory expectations continue to evolve. So across industries, regulators, auditors, cyber insurers, customers, they're all moving away from accepting static, periodic attestations and toward expectations of continuous assurance, demonstrable control effectiveness, and verifiable operational evidence. Organizations are being asked to show not only that controls exist, but that those controls are operating consistently over time, that exceptions are being identified correctly, and that remediation activities can be demonstrated without fail. The result is an evidentiary problem. Security operations generate enormous amounts of data every day. Compliance programs require evidence every single day. Yet the process of connecting these two realities often remains highly manual, fragmented, and resource intrusive. This creates a bottleneck where skilled security professionals spend significant time proving work instead of performing work. So what I want to go over for my part of the presentation is exploring the gap between the role that automation can play in closing it. Specifically, I want to cover the regulatory and audit trends that are driving demand for continuous assurance, the operational limitations of traditional compliance evidence collection, how CMX's 360 platform is positioned to transform operational security data into compliance-ready evidence, and then the governance, the validation, and oversight processes required before organizations should treat that automated compliance output as authoritative. Now, our objective overall is not to evaluate whether an operating model built around automated evidence collection and continuous control validation can materially reduce compliance effort while improving confidence in outcomes. So one final note before we begin. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to show some performance metrics, efficiency gains, compliance outcomes, operational improvements that are all reported by Sekion. These figures are useful because they help establish the value hypothesis of CMX 360, and they illustrate what may be achievable under certain conditions. Obviously, your results vary. However, they should be viewed as directional rather than assumed outcomes. Their applicability should be validated against any organization's specific compliance frameworks, telemetry coverage, controlled environments, audit methodology, staffing model, and of course, operating costs. The goal of my discussion here today is therefore not to accept claims at face value, but determine what would be needed to be true within a given environment for similar results to be realized and sustained. So with that context established, I want to begin by examining why compliance evidence has become one of the most significant operational bottlenecks in modern cybersecurity programs. So the first shift organizations have to recognize is both regulatory and operational. Across industries, regulators and standards bodies are moving away from point-in-time compliance and toward expectations of continuous assurance. With that being said, NIST CSF 2.0 is one of the foundational compliance frameworks of CMX 360. So it does not describe cybersecurity as a sequence of activities performed once a year, documented for an audit. Instead, its functions are intended to operate concurrently. Governance, identification, protection, and detection activities occur continuously, while response and recovery capabilities must remain ready at all times. That represents a fundamental change in most mindsets. The traditional compliance model assumes that organizations can periodically assess controls, collect evidence, and assemble documentation, and then demonstrate compliance at a fixed point in time. The emerging model assumes controls are active, monitored, measured, and capable of producing evidence continuously, 24/7, 365, at the drop of a hat. In other words, organizations are increasingly being asked to demonstrate what is happening now, not what was documented last quarter or last year. This trend exists and expands beyond NIST. The same pattern is visible across multiple regulatory regimes. In Europe, NIS2 expands cybersecurity risk management requirements across a significantly broader range of sectors while introducing stronger supervision, enforcement mechanisms, incident reporting requirements, and explicit accountability for senior leadership. Similarly, DORA, the Digital Operation Resilience Act, which became fully applicable on January 17th of 2025, that covers financial entities. Operational resilience is no longer viewed as a periodic compliance exercise. It's a continuous business responsibility requiring ongoing visibility into risk, control, incidents, and resilience outcomes. The payment industry has moved in the same direction. PCI DSS 401, the current version of the standard, includes requirements that became effective on March 31st, 2025, many of which emphasize ongoing validation, monitoring, testing, and security process maturity rather than static documentation alone. While these frameworks do differ in scope, industry focus, and terminology, they share a single common expectation. Organizations must be able to demonstrate that security controls are operating effectively, being monitored consistently, and being governed appropriately in the present, not merely that policies exist or that assessments were completed months ago. The strategic implication of this is that it creates a significant challenge for security and compliance teams. Most organizations still collect evidence through highly manual processes built around those yearly or quarterly audit cycles. But the regulatory environment increasingly expects evidence that reflects current operational reality. So the result is a growing gap between how security is actually performed and how compliance evidence is collected and presented. Closing that gap is the central challenge of modern compliance programs. And it's the problem that continuous evidence generation and automated assurance platforms are designed to address. So the key takeaway here is the question is no longer whether controls exist. The question is whether organizations continuously prove that those controls are functioning, monitored, and effective. So if the first shift is regulatory, the second is operational. And I know some of these slides are going to look familiar, and I apologize. The challenge most organizations face is not understanding what a security control is supposed to do. Security leaders can readily explain the purpose of access controls, vulnerability management programs, encryption standards, logging requirements, and incident response procedures. The more difficult question is, how do we prove consistently, repeatably, and at scale that those controls actually operated during the period being audited? So that challenge exists at the evidence layer. A control may be functioning perfectly, but unless evidence can be collected, validated, and mapped to the relevant requirement, the organization still bears the burden of proving compliance. The cost of manual evidence collection. So in many environments, evidence collection remains heavily manual. Highly skilled security analysts, myself among them, engineers, compliance professionals, we all spend significant amounts of time gathering screenshots, exporting reports, reconciling spreadsheets, collecting attestations, and responding to audit requests. The result is an inefficient operating model where technical expertise is increasingly consumed by administrative work. Instead of strengthening security posture, valuable personnel are often engaged in proving that work occurred after the fact. That documentary black hole that all of us seem to fall into every quarter or every audit cycle. The organization effectively pays experienced security professionals to function as document assemblers. So the problem becomes even more pronounced when multiple frameworks are involved. Most compliance requirements are not unique. Controls related to encryption, identity and access management, logging and monitoring, vulnerability management, change management, incident response, they all appear repeatedly, across standards and regulations such as NIST, NIST2, DORA, PCI DSS, ISO 27001, SOC 2, HIPAA, etc., etc. Yet despite this overlap, organizations are often forced to collect and manage evidence separately for each framework, each assessment, and each audit cycle. The same control may be verified multiple times by different teams using different artifacts and different reporting formats. As compliance obligations expand, the workload grows disproportionately to the evidence required and collected. The second challenge is organizational separation. Security operations and compliance functions frequently maintain different systems of record and different views of the environment. Security teams work from operational telemetry. We've got alerts, log sources, configuration changes, vulnerability findings, incident investigations. Compliance teams often work from artifacts, policies, audit reports, screenshots, spreadsheets, prior assessment results collected historically and contextually. As a result, security may know immediately when a control degrades, fails, or changes. Compliance may continue relying on evidence collected months earlier. This represents an operational disconnect that affects the organization. So the organization can therefore find itself in a situation where documentation indicates compliance, while operational reality tells a completely different story. And then finally, traditional audits provide only a point-in-time reference. Passing an audit demonstrates that the organization met a specific set of requirements at a specific moment in time. It does not establish that the environment remained compliant the next day, the next week, or the next quarter. Between audit cycles, configurations change, systems are added or removed, vulnerabilities emerge, controls drift from their intended state. This creates an important distinction for all organizations. An audit result is a historical observation, it's not continuous assurance. For organizations operating under modern regulatory expectations, that distinction matters more now than ever. So you want to know, why does this matter to CMX 360? The source materials consistently identify 4 recurring challenges: manual evidence collection, duplicated effort across frameworks, security and compliance operating in silos, limited real-time visibility into control effectiveness. These are not isolated process issues. Together, they form the evidence bottleneck that prevents organizations from achieving continuous assurance. CMX 360 is positioned as an attempt to address that bottleneck by connecting operational security data directly to compliance obligation, reducing manual evidence collection, and creating a more continuous view of control effectiveness. The problem facing most organizations is not a shortage of controls. It's a shortage of trusted, continuously generated evidence that those controls are actually working. Provable execution matters more than control intent. So before evaluating any compliance automation platform, it's important to establish one simple principle. A compliance platform is only as credible as the evidence chain it preserves. The question is not whether a platform can generate dashboards, scores, or compliance reports. The question is whether those outputs can be traced back to reliable, defensible evidence that could withstand scrutiny from an auditor, a regulator, customer, or even internal review. This provides the evaluation model for the remainder of the briefing. So step 1, collect evidence from the source, your telemetry. Controls can only be validated if data is collected from the systems that actually operate those controls. Authentication systems, endpoint platforms, cloud services, network infrastructure, vulnerability scanners, ticketing systems, and security monitoring platforms all generate operational data that may serve as evidence. However, data collection alone is insufficient. A large volume of logs does not automatically create assurance. Organizations must first establish that the telemetry being collected is complete, relevant, and representative of the control environment being evaluated. Step 2, the validation. Transform that raw data into validated control evidence. A single log entry rarely proves that the control was effective, but to determine whether a requirement was satisfied, activity often needs to be interpreted within a broader operational context. For example, is the asset in scope for the control being evaluated? Which identities were involved? Were alerts investigated and dispositioned appropriately? Was an incident escalated and resolved according to policy? Were exceptions approved and documented? Without this context, the data remains exactly that, just data. It does not become evidence. The distinction is critical because auditors do not evaluate log volume. They evaluate whether evidence supports a control assertion. Mapping evidence to multiple requirements. Once evidence has been validated, it can be mapped to the controls and requirements that depend upon it. This is where the automation can provide substantial value. This is where CMX 360 makes its own money back. Many frameworks require proof of the same underlying activities: access management, vulnerability management, logging and monitoring, change control, incident response, asset management. If validated evidence can be collected once and mapped multiple times, organizations can significantly reduce duplication across regulatory, contractual, and audit obligations. So rather than recreating evidence for every single framework that applies to your organization, the platform then becomes a mechanism for reusing trusted evidence across multiple compliance objectives. And then lastly, producing an audit-ready review. So the final step is that presentation. It's a compliance platform that must be able to transform operational evidence into auditor-ready outputs while preserving the traceability back to the underlying source data. An auditor should be able to move from requirement to control to evidence to source record without losing visibility or confidence in the chain of custody. The stronger that traceability, the stronger the credibility of the compliance assertion. Without traceability, automation risks becoming a reporting exercise rather than a defensible assurance mechanism. The critical distinction is automation versus authority. This leads to perhaps the most important concept in my entire briefing. Automation is not the same thing as authority. It should not ever be confused for being the same thing. Automation can make evidence collection faster, it can improve consistency, reduce manual effort, it can simplify framework mapping, but automation does not eliminate governance responsibilities. Organizations must still define their assessment scope, validate their control mappings, approve exceptions, reduce evidence quality, or review evidence quality, retain records appropriately, resolve audit disputes, exercise management oversight. No platform can fully automate accountability. The measure of a compliance platform is not how much it automates. The measure is whether it preserves a trustworthy evidence chain from operational activity to audit-ready proof. Everything that follows should be evaluated through that lens. Can the platform demonstrate not only what it claims, but why those claims should be trusted? And that brings us to CMX 360 as a whole. So having established the regulatory shift toward continuous assurance and the operational challenges surrounding evidence collection, our next question then becomes, how does CMX 360 attempt to solve the problem? CMX 360's core position can be summarized as security native compliance. Unlike traditional compliance platforms that begin with questionnaires, manual attestations, document requests, CMX 360 starts with the operational data already being generated across the security environment. The underlying assumption is straightforward. If security controls are being monitored and validated operationally, the evidence required for compliance should already exist within the system performing that work. At the foundation of the platform is the broader Sekion ecosystem, particularly their open threat management and AI SIM platforms. These platforms collect and analyze security telemetry from across the environment, including security and infrastructure logs, identity and authentication activity, network traffic and monitoring data, endpoint security platforms, cloud workloads and services, business and security applications. Rather than treating compliance evidence as a separate process, CMX 360 is designed from the ground up to leverage that existing telemetry as the starting point for compliance assessment. The premise is that the same data used to operate security can also be used to demonstrate security. So collecting telemetry alone does not create compliance evidence. CMX 360's intended function is to correlate operational activity within specific security controls, and then evaluate whether sufficient evidence exists to support those controls. Conceptually, the workflow is telemetry, control evidence, framework mapping, and then compliance reporting. For example, activity associated with authentication enforcement, vulnerability remediation, incident handling, log monitoring may all be connected to specific control requirements, but once validated, those controls can then be mapped across multiple frameworks and obligations. This is where compliance automation has the potential to reduce duplication significantly. So rather than recreating evidence separately for every audit, assessment, regulatory requirement, a single body of validated operational evidence can potentially support multiple compliance objectives simultaneously. And then the final layer is that visibility. CMX 360 is designed to expose compliance posture through readiness dashboards, controlled status reporting, framework mapping views, audit-oriented evidence reports, compliance summaries. The objective is to provide stakeholders with a current view of compliance posture while maintaining traceability back to that underlying operational evidence that it is continuously collecting through automation. This enables organizations to move from periodic compliance exercises toward a continuous model of assurance for all regulatory bodies. An important consideration is deployment context. So the CMX 360 data sheet positions the product as a natural extension of an existing Sekion deployment. So for organizations already using AIM SIM and the broader OTM model platform, much of the telemetry collection, normalization, and correlation infrastructure may already exist. That distinction matters because implementation effort, data quality, and time to value are likely to differ substantially between an organization with established Sekion deployment and an organization introducing both compliance automation and telemetry collection simultaneously. The maturity of the underlying security data environment will have a direct impact on the quality of the resulting complementary evidence. The architecture diagram shown on the left side of the screen provides useful context regarding where CMX 360 fits within the broader Sekion platform ecosystem. However, it is important not to confuse architectural representation with operational validation. A platform diagram shows intended integration points. It does not prove that integrations are complete, accurate, or sufficient for a particular compliance objective. So before treating automated outputs as authoritative, all organizations should verify connector coverage, data normalization, asset and organization coverage, evidence retention capabilities. Ultimately, the value of the platform will depend less on the diagram and more on the quality and completeness of the evidence chain supporting the compliance assertions. Central mapping makes control evidence reusable. So one of CMX 360's most valuable and frequently cited capabilities is its breadth of framework coverage. Currently, CMX 360 covers 20 plus individual regional cybersecurity, privacy, and compliance frameworks. At first glance, the number itself is impressive, but the real value is not the quantity of the frameworks. It's the real value is the possibility of the evidentiary reuse. Most organizations discover that compliance frameworks are far less unique than they initially appeared. Regardless of the regulations or standard, many frameworks seek assurance around the same fundamental security practices: identity and access management, privilege access control, encryption, security monitoring and logging, vulnerability management, etc. While the language differs, the underlying control objectives are often remarkably similar. As a result, a single piece of validated evidence may support multiple compliance requirements simultaneously. For example, a privileged access review may demonstrate compliance with SOC 2, ISO 2701, NIST, NIST 800, CMMC 2.0, PCI DSS, and similarly, evidence supporting vulnerability management or incident response effectiveness may satisfy requirements across numerous frameworks at the same time. This is where the centralized control mapping of CMX 360 can create substantial operational efficiency. Rather than repeatedly collecting, documenting, and validating the same evidence for different assessments, organizations can potentially collect it once and reuse it across multiple obligations. For most compliance teams, the effort is not driven by the number of controls being implemented. The effort is driven by the number of times those controls must be explained, documented, and evidenced. Without centralized mapping, organizations often find themselves proving the same fact repeatedly to auditors, to regulators, to customers, to partners, to internal governance groups. The administrative burden grows with each new framework, even when the underlying control environment remains largely unchanged. The promise of a platform such as CMX 360 to automate and validate that operational evidence can become a shared resource supporting multiple compliance objectives simultaneously. But this is also where caution is required. A common misconception in compliance automation is that if two frameworks contain similar controls, then they can be treated as equivalent. In practice, that's rarely true. Frameworks differ in important ways, including scope and applicability, regulatory authority, assessment methodology, required evidence periods, testing procedures. Two frameworks may both require access control, but they may require different forms of evidence, different testing approaches, or different methods of demonstrating effectiveness. The existing of a mapping relationship does not eliminate those differences. For that reason, framework mapping should be reviewed as an accelerator rather than a replacement for compliance expertise. Automation can identify overlaps. Automation can reduce duplicated effort. Automation can streamline evidence collection. But organizations still need knowledgeable stakeholders capable of determining whether the map evidence genuinely satisfies the intent of a given requirement. Ultimately, accountability remains with the organization, not the mapping engine. So when assessing CMX 360, one of the most valuable exercises that I can ask of any organization is to test the quality of the mappings themselves. Rather than evaluating every framework, select some high-value controls and trace them across multiple standards. Privileged access management, vulnerability management, incident response, security monitoring, asset inventory. This provides a practical way to determine whether framework overlap is being represented accurately rather than merely being displayed cosmetically. The value of the broad framework coverage represented by CMX 360 is not that one control automatically satisfies every regulation. The value is that a single body of trusted evidence can be reused across multiple obligations, provided the mapping preserves the intent, the scope, and the assurance requirements of each framework individually. Continuous compliance. It changes the assurance cadence. Traditionally, compliance activities tend to accelerate in the month leading up to an assessment. Teams define scope, gather evidence, test controls, remediate findings, update documentation, and assemble audit packages under fixed deadlines. The closer the audit date approaches, the more intense the effort becomes. This creates a familiar cycle to many of us. Evidence is collected late, control gaps are identified late, remediation occurs under time pressure, then audit readiness becomes a project instead of becoming an operational state. And as a result, compliance often becomes a periodic exercise rather than an ongoing capability. For many organizations, compliance resembles just a series of snapshots of organizational readiness. For months, security and compliance activities proceed independently. Then, when an assessment cycle begins, teams reconstruct what happened during the review period by collecting artifacts from multiple systems, stakeholders, and business units across the environment. The process is typically reactive. Success depends largely on how quickly the organization can recover and organize historical evidence. The challenge is that when evidence is gathered late, deficiencies are often discovered late as well. By the time a control gap is identified, there may be limited opportunity to correct it before the assessment period closes and the audit is considered complete. Continuous compliance shifts the focus from periodic preparation to ongoing validation. So instead of concentrating activity around audit deadlines, organizations are instead continuously collecting evidence, validating control performance, maintaining their framework mappings, monitoring compliance status, tracking exceptions. This does not mean every control is tested every second or that every piece of evidence requires real-time monitoring. Instead, what it means is that the organization establishes appropriate refresh frequencies based on risk, control type, business impact, and regulatory requirements. The objective is to maintain a current understanding of compliance posture throughout the year, rather than having to reconstruct it afterward in a rush to meet an application deadline. The greatest advantage of continuous compliance is visibility. When evidence collection and control monitoring occur on a recurring basis, material changes become visible much earlier. Configuration drift, missing log sources, failed controls, new assets entering into scope, incomplete vulnerability remediation. Instead of discovering these issues during audit prep, organizations can identify and address them while there's still time to resolve them. This shifts compliance from crisis management to operational management, giving stakeholders increased lead time to deal with any material changes that occur during the lead up to an audit cycle. The operating model aligns closely with the direction of modern cybersecurity frameworks. NIST CSF 2.0, for example, it emphasizes concurrent cybersecurity functions and ongoing improvement rather than periodic assessment cycles. Governance, identification, protection, and detection are all expected to operate continuously, while response recovery capabilities remain ready when required. Continuous compliance is a natural extension of that philosophy. Rather than treating compliance as separate from security operations, it treats compliance as a byproduct of continuously operating and validating controls. So this is also consistent with Sekion's positioning for CMX 360. The platform itself is designed around the idea that compliance status should evolve as operational telemetry changes. As security events occur, controls are monitored, assets change, and evidence is generated. Dashboards and framework mappings are intended to reflect those changes automatically. In this model, compliance readiness becomes a continuously updated measurement rather than a periodic archival estimate. The value proposition is not simply faster reporting. The value proposition is maintaining visibility into compliance posture between audits instead of waiting for the next assessment cycle to reveal problems. It is important to understand what continuous compliance is and what it is not. The objective is not to eliminate audits, however much we wish we could. Audits remain necessary for independent validation, governance oversight, and regulatory assurance. The objective is to change the role of the audit itself. Instead of becoming a high-pressure effort to locate missing evidence, reconstruct historical activity, the audit becomes a verification exercise against the products, a process that has already been monitored, measured, and maintained throughout the year. Traditional compliance treats readiness as something achieved before an audit. Continuous compliance treats readiness as an operational condition that exists every day. This is a key differentiator. The goal is to make audits confirm what is already known rather than to discover what has been missed during the periods between reviews. The dashboard itself. The dashboard is valuable because it separates two questions that are often treated as if they are the same, when in practice they measure very different things. The first question is, do we have evidence? The second question, invariably, is the control actually working? A mature compliance program must be able to answer both, oftentimes simultaneously. Evidence completion measures whether current traceable artifacts exist to support a requirement. You've got policies and procedures, configuration records, control test results, system-generated logs, access reviews. In simple terms, evidence completion answers, can we prove the requirement was addressed? Control completion, by contrast, measures the safeguard itself has been implemented, is operating as intended, and has been verified within the relevant scope. That answers a different question. Is the requirement actually being met? When these metrics are related, they're not interchangeable. Organizations frequently encounter situations where one metric is strong and the other is weak. For example, a team may upload a policy, provide supporting screenshots, attach completed documentation, and achieve high evidence completion percentages, yet the underlying control itself may be ineffective because systems are misconfigured, reviews are not being performed, monitoring coverage is incomplete, exceptions are unmanaged. In those situations, the organization can demonstrate evidence without demonstrating effectiveness. The reverse scenario is equally common. A security team may operate a highly effective control with strong monitoring and enforcement, yet lack the required documentation, attestations, or formal artifacts needed to satisfy an auditor or a regulatory compliance cycle. In that case, the control exists, but the evidence chain is incomplete. The dashboard becomes useful only when it helps stakeholders exist or distinguish between those two conditions. Sekion's materials emphasize multi-framework visibility, continuous readiness assessment, real-time compliance tracking, cross-framework control mapping. So what exactly does that represent? The compliance scores that you see in CMX 360 should not be treated as a conclusion. They should be treated as the beginning of an investigation. Leaders need to understand whether a score reflects evidence availability, control effectiveness, risk weighting, assessment frequency. Not mean to do that. Apologies. Without the understanding, the percentages become management metrics without operational meaning. One of the best ways to evaluate a platform like CMX 360 is to test the depth of its traceability. At each layer, organizations should ask to see the original evidence source, timestamp information, asset or business unit scope, responsible owners. All of that can be seen and found within the CMX 360. A readiness score has value only if users can trace it back to specific controls, specific evidence, and specific owners. The dashboard should support investigations and accountability, not merely display attractive percentages. Any discussion of compliance automation eventually comes down to measurable outcomes. Sekion's published materials report several significant performance improvements, including 90% faster evidence collection, 75% faster audit completion, 65% fewer audit findings, a reduction in SOC 2 readiness timelines from 6 to 9 months to 2 to 3 weeks. The accompanying materials reinforce the same outcome pattern. We are positioning CMX 360 as a platform that can significantly reduce compliance effort while accelerating audit readiness. All of these metrics are vendor-reported outcomes. The supplied materials include details such as independent study methodology, sample size, industry distribution, control groups. The impact of automation will vary depending on existing compliance maturity, current audit processes, security tooling coverage. Organizations starting from highly manual processes may see dramatic improvements. Organizations that have already invested heavily in GRC style automation may experience more incremental gains. A more useful question beyond are the numbers true? The organization can achieve similar results operating under its own conditions. That question can only be answered through measurement. Rather than debating industry averages or published percentages, organizations should always establish their own baselines and evaluate whether automation produces meaningful local improvements. Got to stop doing that. It's making me look bad. So a key question for any organization evaluating CMX 360 is not simply what framework does it support, but rather where does compliance automation create the greatest operational value? Is it financial services? Is it healthcare? Is it government? Is it defense and aerospace? Is it critical infrastructure? The number one characteristic of all of this is evidence collection. Is it repetitive and expensive? The first indicator of a strong fit is a compliance program that spends significant time collecting, organizing, and validating evidence. These organizations often face recurring requests for access reviews, vulnerability reports, security monitoring records, incident documentation, asset inventories. When the same information must be gathered repeatedly across environments, customer reviews, and regulatory examinations, automation can produce meaningful efficiency gains. The larger the evidence burden, the greater the potential returns. Characteristic number 2, controls that generate observable telemetry. The second indicator is that the controls themselves produce measurable operational activity. Controls are easier to automate when they generate evidence directly from systems such as SIM platforms, identity systems, endpoint security tools, vulnerability scanners. These controls naturally produce telemetry that can be collected, validated, and mapped to compliance requirements. The stronger and more complete the telemetry, the stronger the resulting evidence chain. Characteristic number 3, framework overlap. Does it create reuse opportunities? Organizations managing multiple compliance obligations frequently spend time proving the same underlying controls repeatedly.